What if I told you that just 10 days ago, the world came within minutes of a conflict that could have redrawn the entire geopolitical map? A story so classified that even now, only fragments have emerged through encrypted military channels and satellite imagery that governments wish had never been captured. This isn't Hollywood fiction. This is what happens when the most elite warriors on the planet face an enemy that's been armed, trained, and emboldened by a superpower determined to challenge American dominance at sea. Before we dive into what really happened that night in the Indian Ocean, I need to ask you something. Are you ready to see how modern warfare actually unfolds? Because what you're about to witness will change everything you thought you knew about special operations. If you've ever wondered what it takes to operate in the shadows against impossible odds, stay with me until the end. And hey, if you're as fascinated by these real-world operations as I am, drop a comment below and let me know. Do you think our special forces are prepared for this new era of warfare? Let's discuss. At 0930 hours this morning, military intelligence networks lit up across 3 continents. Declassified satellite imagery revealed something that had been hidden for 10 days, an incident that brought the USS Abraham Lincoln battle group to full combat alert in the middle of the Indian Ocean. The clock rewinds to January 20th, 0415 hours. The waters off the Gulf of Oman were deceptively calm. A massive container vessel, flagged out of the Marshall Islands but broadcasting falsified Singaporean identification codes, was making its way toward the Strait of Hormuz under cover of darkness. But this was no ordinary cargo ship. Hidden deep in cargo hold 4, beneath welded steel plates and false compartments, sat 12 tons of advanced Russian-manufactured guidance components, the kind that transform crude ballistic missiles into precision weapons. This wasn't just smuggling. This was Moscow's insurance policy, ensuring Tehran could rebuild its missile production capabilities after last year's devastating Israeli airstrikes had reduced their facilities to rubble. Now, let me ask you something, knowing what Russia is willing to supply to Iran, how do you think this changes the balance of power in the Middle East? Think about that as this story unfolds. Above the dark waters, an MQ-4C Triton surveillance drone maintained its silent vigil, its advanced sensors locked onto the vessel. But at 0418 hours, something unprecedented happened. The drone's feed went completely dark, not from a malfunction, but from a Russian-supplied Krasuka-4 electronic warfare system that had just been activated aboard the ship. This was Moscow's latest gift to Tehran, the ability to blind American eyes in the sky. Iran thought they had the advantage. They were wrong. The destroyer USS Spruance had been tracking the vessel through passive sonar for the past 40 minutes. As the cargo ship accelerated toward disputed waters, the American warship broke radio silence with a direct order to stop. When that order was ignored, a controlled burst of .50 caliber tracer fire ripped across the bow, close enough to shower the bridge with seawater. The Iranian captain made a hard turn, engine straining. But that moment of panic was exactly what the Americans needed. 2 rigid-hull inflatable boats, launched from the Spruance under cover of darkness, closed the distance in under 3 minutes. 12 operators from Naval Special Warfare Development Group, the unit you know as SEAL Team 6, scaled the hull using magnetic climbing systems, clearing the rail in just 18 seconds. They thought they were dealing with a smuggling operation. They had no idea they were walking into a carefully prepared kill zone. At 0422 hours, the SEAL team began cutting through the reinforced lock on cargo hold 4. The thermal lance, burning at over 3,800 degrees, made quick work of the hardened steel. But as the first operator prepared to breach, his thermal imaging scope began flashing urgent warnings. 8 heat signatures. Full tactical positioning. Weapons ready. This wasn't a crew of merchant sailors. This was a Quds force protection detail, Iran's most elite operatives, armed with Russian-supplied suppressed submachine guns and, critically, 2 shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles. They'd been inserted onto this vessel specifically to protect this shipment. And they'd been trained by Russian Spetsnaz advisors at a classified facility outside Tehran. For those of you watching who've served, you know what this means. Comment below if you've ever had to make a split-second decision when the intelligence was wrong. How do you think you'd react? The SEAL team commander had less than 5 seconds to make a decision. Standard breach protocol would send his men straight into a firing squad. Instead, he made a call that would save their lives: flashbang grenades through the ventilation shaft. The confined explosion created a pressure wave that temporarily incapacitated all 8 Quds fighters. In those crucial 4 seconds of disorientation, SEALs fast roped down and neutralized the threat using close-quarters combat techniques that are still classified. 2 of the Iranian operatives attempted to activate suicide vests Russian intelligence had taught them well. Both were stopped with precision fire before they could trigger the devices. 6 hostiles zip-tied. 0 American casualties. But the real shock was still waiting. When they pried open the container they'd come for, it was empty. Completely empty. Iran, with Russian engineering assistance, had cut through the ship's original floor, created a false bottom, hidden the guidance systems in the space below, then welded an 8-centimeter steel plate over top and painted it to match the original deck. The empty container above was nothing but bait. The mission had just transformed from a quick snatch and grab into something far more dangerous. Cutting through 8 centimeters of load-bearing steel would take at least 7 minutes with the tools they had. 7 minutes during which the heat buildup in the confined space could turn the cargo hold into a furnace, consuming oxygen faster than they could breathe. But they had no choice. Without physical evidence of Russian weapons transfers, Washington's case at the UN would collapse. On the surface, the situation was deteriorating fast. The Iranian captain, realizing his ship had been boarded, made a desperate gamble. Instead of surrendering, he pushed the engines to maximum power. The 50,000-ton vessel surged forward at 22 knots, weaving erratically across the Spruance's bow at distances that would terrify any naval officer. Then the real threat emerged. 11 Iranian fast attack boats, Russian-designed Paykap-class vessels equipped with anti-ship missiles, exploded out from behind a screen of civilian fishing boats. They deployed chaff and flares, creating an electromagnetic fog that made the Spruance's targeting systems strobe and fail. The American gunners couldn't fire. The Iranian boats had deliberately positioned themselves among innocent fishermen, creating a human shield that made engagement impossible without civilian casualties. Here's a question for you: what would you do in that situation? When the rules of engagement prevent you from defending your own forces? Let me know in the comments. The SEALs trapped inside the cargo hold were now completely isolated, surrounded by hostile forces with no immediate extraction option. The whistling sound of turbine engines overhead announced the next threat, for Shahed-136 kamikaze drones, another gift from Moscow's arsenal, now heading directly for the American formation. At 0435 hours, the tactical situation reached critical mass. Long-range radar detected 4 C-802 anti-ship missiles being raced to launch position at Iran's Keshem Island coastal battery. Tehran had decided to end this confrontation permanently, even if it meant sacrificing their own ship and the operatives aboard. The SEAL team leader made the hardest call of his career: abandon the physical evidence, deploy the contingency plan. They would use an electromagnetic pulse device combined with sophisticated malware to corrupt the guidance systems permanently, making them worthless to Iran's missile program. But first, they had to access the ship's data network, buried somewhere in the engine compartment beneath them. While the ship pitched violently through evasive maneuvers, one SEAL technical specialist crawled into a cramped maintenance conduit barely wide enough for his shoulders. Instead of a convenient access port, he faced a sealed steel conduit that had to be cut open using a handsaw in near total darkness, while the deck lurched beneath him. The Iranian captain, realizing American missiles would soon be inbound, executed a sharp 90-degree turn directly towards Sri Lankan territorial waters. He was betting everything on a diplomatic shield if the Americans fired in neutral waters. The international fallout would be catastrophic for Washington. The sudden turn caused the ship to heel over at 16 degrees. Equipment broke loose. The technical specialist, half-wedged in the engine space, watched a backup generator assembly slide past his position, missing his legs by inches. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the impossibility of threading a data tap while the entire vessel bucked like a wounded animal beneath him. For those of you who work in high-pressure environments, you know this feeling. When everything depends on keeping your hands steady while the world falls apart around you. Have you ever been there? Share your story below. Above the chaos, an EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft from the Abraham Lincoln entered the battlespace. The pilot activated the ALQ-99 jamming pod, flooding Iranian command frequencies with electromagnetic noise so powerful it severed the cargo ship's communication with shore-based commanders. The Iranian captain was now operating blind, unable to receive the fire control data needed to guide the coastal missiles onto target. But Iran's SA-15 Tor air defense system on Qeshm Island had already locked onto the Growler. The American pilot, instead of evading, did something audacious. He launched 4 ADM-160 MALD decoy drones that simulated the radar signature of an entire F/A-18 strike package, making it appear that a full-scale attack was inbound. The Iranian air defense batteries took the bait, wasting their missiles on phantom targets. In the cargo hold, the SEAL team finally patched their malware payload into the ship's data network. But at that exact moment, their worst-case scenario materialized. The Iranian captain, having lost contact with his Quds Force security team, grabbed an AK-47 and led 5 remaining crew members down into the cargo hold to investigate. Their flashlights swept across the darkness and locked onto 4 American operators crouched around electronic equipment they couldn't identify. 4 against 6, in a 4-meter square space, on a deck slick with hydraulic fluid and seawater. Outside, the Spruance's radar was screaming warnings: C-802 missiles launched, impact in 90 seconds. Tehran had fired blind at the last known coordinates, willing to sink their own ship to eliminate the American team. What happened next took 23 seconds. While the Iranian sailors fired wildly in panic, the SEALs remained ice-cold. 2 operators dropped low and engaged with suppressed sidearms, double-tap shots to center mass, dropping the first 2 targets instantly. The Iranian captain tried to prime a grenade, but a 9mm round struck his shoulder, causing him to drop it. A SEAL kicked the weapon clear and neutralized him with non-lethal force. The firefight ended. 4 Iranians wounded, 2 down, 0 American casualties. But there was no time to celebrate. The command net was screaming, "Vampire, Vampire, incoming missile, Mach 0.9, impact 60 seconds. The team leader made the final call: blow the scupper hatch with a linear cutting charge and abandon ship immediately. The explosion ripped a 3-meter hole in the hull. Wind and seawater roared in. Each operator clipped their safety line and threw themselves into the darkness, falling 15 meters into the Black Ocean while the ship screamed past at 22 knots. The stealth boats accelerated in pursuit, extracting each man from the water in a maneuver that still makes experienced coxswains shake their heads in disbelief. Aboard the Spruance, the captain launched a Nulka-active decoy. The hovering drone emitted powerful electromagnetic signals that seduced the incoming Iranian missile off course. It detonated 400 meters from the American formation, close enough to feel the shockwave, far enough to survive. On January 21, the cargo ship limped into Bandar Abbas to quiet celebration from Iranian military command. But when weapons technicians connected the guidance systems to their diagnostic computers, every screen displayed the same message: fatal error. Firmware corrupted. The Russian-supplied components were now worthless. 12 tons of sophisticated technology, reduced to expensive scrap metal. And Iran had no evidence to present to the world, no American equipment left behind, no proof of the incursion. Meanwhile, they had to quietly bury 6 Quds Force operatives, unable to admit they'd been protecting an illegal weapons shipment. The Pentagon's Psychological Warfare Division ensured that just enough details leaked through open-source intelligence channels at the exact moment. The Abraham Lincoln battle group moved into position. The message was clear: we see everything, and we can reach you anywhere. Iran's response was immediate. Submarine fleets deployed. Proxy forces across the region went to high alert. And in Moscow, military planners watched carefully, analyzing how their weapons and training had performed against American operators. That 23-second firefight in a cargo hold has reverberations that are still unfolding today. So here's my question for you: in this new era of proxy warfare, where superpowers arm regional rivals with increasingly sophisticated technology, how do you think the United States should respond? Are we prepared for conflicts where the enemy has access to near-peer capabilities? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story showed you something about modern warfare you didn't know before, hit that like button. And if you want to stay informed as this situation continues to develop in the Gulf region, make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on. Because one thing is certain, this story is far from over. The next chapter could be breaking right now. I'll see you in the next one.